Finger when ready.
Hey MBA hopefuls, we're on air with MBA Waves, your weekly vidcast talking all things business and education, streaming live every Tuesday on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, bringing you tons of information to help you get into a top ranked MBA program. And if you like this week's episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Today, on episode 108, we're talking about the latest trends in the world of test prep. We're going to dive into the shorter GRE, the all new TOEFL, and how to prep to ace both of these tests. As always, I'm your host, Krithika Srinivasan, joined by my co hosts, Bara Sapir and Eric Lucrezia. Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Hey.
Krithika.
All right, and it's a pleasure to introduce the two special guests today. Jay Bryant of ETS, who's the Associate Director of Business School Relations, Western USA and Canada, and Jim Albertone, ETS Associate Director of Academic Partnerships. Over to Jay first. Welcome back, Jay. We had you before. Can you tell us briefly about your role?
Sure. Well, I've been with ETS for several years now. My background, I've spent most of my career working in admissions and recruiting. I've overseen financial aid, student services, and some student affairs, things like that, as well during my career, but mostly in admissions and recruiting. Two different schools, Thunderbird, which is now part of Arizona State University, and the Rady School at University of California in San Diego. I've spent, two decades in the industry, and know it well. I've read thousands of applications, conducted thousands of interviews, and then the opportunity came to work with ETS as more of a liaison from ETS to folks who are in my positions at business schools. So I literally work with all the business schools and I'm located now in Texas, from Texas up to Alaska, down to Southern California, and everything in between. So a couple hundred business schools in that area, and I work directly with them with their assessment, with admissions, anything I can help with on behalf of ETS. So the thing I work with most closely is usually the GRE. So that's what I'm here representing today.
That's amazing. I think we have so much to unpack there. Right. So, welcome, Jim. A big welcome to you.
Thank
Could you
you.
please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Albertone, and I am also with ETS. I cover more of the TOEFL side of what we do here at ETS. My background is for the last probably 15 years or so, I've worked in higher ed, primarily on the publishing side. I worked with Pearson for many years, with Wiley, and with Lego Education. And I've recently joined ETS about a year and a half ago. And similar to Jay, I cover a geographic area where I work with mostly admissions departments. And I live in Chicago, and I cover primarily the Midwest, which would be Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and sort of that region, Missouri. So I look forward to talking to everybody today about the new changes with TOEFL.
Welcome, Jim. Welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So, I'm just going to just get started. When it comes to tests, I think we love the word short. The shorter it is, the better it is. So, please give us a quick overview of the shorter GRE, as they're calling it, what's changing, and what should we be knowing about it?
Sure. Well, a number of different things. I will throw out there, I'll start off by saying the GRE and everything. When I was applying for graduate school a few years ago, taking the standardized test was a full day event for sure. By the time you drive to your testing site and take a 4-hour test and whatnot, it really was a painful thing. And coming from the admissions world, I saw many candidates just scared of that and not being able to make that investment of time and everything else to do it. And there was a lot of discussion. Does it have to be that long? Does it need to be everything that's in there? And we're ETS, we took a step back and looked at, are there ways that we can make this a less painful experience for those taking the test? And that's why we have come out with the shorter test. It is now going to be under 2 hours. I believe it's 1 hour and 58 minutes. So right there, significantly shorter. I can certainly speak to different question amounts and things like that, but that's the big thing. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, to sum it all up, I'll get into details with you, but the end of the day, it is really a shorter test. That is the biggest thing I can say about it, is it's just less questions, same stuff, same material, less time.
Right, but the unscored section is also going away, right?
That is correct. Yeah, for many years, ETS on the GRE has used an unscored section, where the candidate didn't even know which section that was, and basically that was kind of a practice ground for us to test questions, to make sure that they were fair for all populations that were taking the test. And if we saw any abnormalities in that, the question could be thrown out or modified until it wasn't there. The truth is, we've got hundreds of questions that are stockpiled from many years of doing that. So we're good with not having that section in there now. It was really for research and for us to do things, and it was not going into the score of the student. So now every question that you're going to answer on the GRE is absolutely 100% pertinent to your outcome and your final score. And
you'll send a press release if that changes, right?
We will absolutely. We'll probably send 100.
Okay. Good. We'll be waiting if that ever changes. But yeah, you did the research. You found that you had all the material, so you didn't have to continue. That makes total sense. Can we backtrack a little bit? And a popular question is, what were the reasons behind the design of the shorter GRE?
Sure.
What was thinking?
Sure.
Besides what you just said.
Yeah. Well, honestly, we are, I mean, the GRE is a test, been around forever. There is a market for it. There's two markets. There's the market of the schools who require it, and there's the market of the test takers themselves. In both cases, well, I would say probably a lot more vocal were the applicants taking it. Like, this is so long, this is such a pain, which say that to the schools, who then say, well, we want these students. We don't want to lose students because they're scared of this over 4-hour test. There are other tests that are out in the market. Last time I was with you, I believe they had just announced that they were doing a shorter test. I so wanted to say something that day and I couldn't, but now I can. That we were working on that behind the scenes as well, and shortly thereafter we're able to announce that. It's really a matter of the market looking for, is there an easier way to do this? This is a test that's been around for almost 70 years. It does go through updates. It does change. The last major change, I believe, was in 2012, where we changed a lot of the format of what was being asked. I still hear all the time, oh, well, the GRE has analogies on it. That's been gone for a decade. So
but that was such a great section. That was the funnest section.
I know, but it's been gone for 10 years. The assessment, education in general, is a living thing. If we just sit on our laurels and don't keep up with what the market needs and wants, then we become obsolete. We don't want that either. So we dug internally and said, okay, what can we do to make this a little less painful? It's still a big test, but what can we do to make it a little less painful for those that are taking it, and still give the validity and the information that a school needs so that they can make an admissions decision.
Do you have a name for it?
I mean, we were asking for this for years. I saw all my applicants, and I'd hear their worries as they were going in to take the test. Like, I don't want to do it. Well,
we deal with those folks. Yeah, no, I hear you. It makes sense. You don't need to do more if you're getting the information that you get in a shorter amount of time.
Right.
You don't need to, you want to be efficient and effective. Do you have a name for the new GRE?
Yeah, it's the GRE.
Just the GRE? Because we did, I have to say that I asked the GMAT folks to trademark my GMAT, their focus, their new name is Focus. And it was, I said, what about the OG, right? If you get that. Anyway, but maybe the GRE could be the GRE AT, the great.
Sure. I mean, yeah. We'll have to discuss.
Bring it to marketing, right?
But yeah, it is. It's the same scoring. It's the same material. It's the same everything.
So you're just keeping
why change the name? I will say, I don't speak for them, but I'm familiar with the GMAT, which many of business candidates may be taking. There's a significant amount of change in that test. And so I understand why they're giving it a new name. For us, it's not. It's just merely a few less questions here and there. So,
got it.
Well, first of all, I'll say that when I was much younger and it was SAT time back in high school, I definitely missed it when the antonym section went away. So it's painful when people lose a section they kind of maybe are comfortable with and have depended on, and well, it's just part of reality. Change is inevitable. Speaking of not being able to rest on their laurels in this more and more fast-paced world in education, right? Yeah, and I suppose that with fewer questions, that kind of means that each question has more weight. Would you say?
Yeah.
So the idea that just because it's shorter means easier may not be the case.
No, I've heard that a bit, and I will say I've listened to a number of podcasts and video casts that are out there, and what people are saying about it, so that I make sure I stay on top of the information. And I have heard several podcasts, some well-known podcasts that I won't name, say, "Oh, well, this is going to be great. You won't have to study as much. You won't have to prepare as much." And in the background, I'm going, no, actually, the same material is going to be tested. It's just you're going to have less questions of it. So as you said, Eric, it is true. I mean, if you have 10 questions and now you have 5 questions, that's not the number here. But if you had 10 and went to 5, suddenly each of those questions is worth 2 questions from before. So you do have to take them seriously. It is not less study. We have not removed any content per se.
Sure. Interesting, this podcast that shall go unnamed had such an opinion without having you on the show, for example, to ask instead of supposing. But that said, let's just hear it officially. When does the new version of the GRE finally get rolled out and available to take?
Sure. On September 22nd, so a few months from now, and you can literally go at any point that you want to and sign up to take the GRE. If you sign up on September 21st, you're taking a 4-hour test. If you sign up on September 22nd, you're taking a 1 hour and 58-minute test. That is as simple as it gets. There's not some big change. There's not all these new test centers. There's nothing. It is literally the day you sign up for it. It will be a different test that's delivered to you on September 22nd and beyond. There will not be 2 tests, so you won't have the option of the longer test on September 22nd. It will be a complete switchover.
Got it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like, so you don't have to have like any different concordance tables and things like that, right? So it's just changed.
That's correct. We've done all I won't say me because I'm not the big statistician here, but all our statisticians and test developers behind the scenes have formatted it in such a way that we don't have to change the scoring at all. It will be consistent. It's 130 to 170 on both the verbal and quant section, and then a 0 to 6 on the writing section. Those scores, if that's what you got before, that's what you're going to get after. So yeah, it doesn't mess with what you may see as school averages of what they, when you look at an admissions profile and they say, we have a quant average of a 163, you're still aiming for the same 163.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I was curious about, I'm sure there's a lot of discussion that would have gone into it. When you were trying to make the test shorter, but you were also thinking about whether it's going to make it more stressful to people, because now they have to answer everything right in order to get a higher score. Whereas like earlier, they had like more leeway or tolerance. Could you tell us more about what went in there?
Sure. Well, it's going to be stressful for no matter what. No matter what. This is, this is not to get into kindergarten. It's to get into grad school. So you got some heavy material there in front of you. I mean, when you look at it, the questions aren't necessarily going to be any harder, any more challenging. You are going to get the same amount of time per question that you got before. Now, we don't sit there and cut the question off after, I forget what the number is, like 2 minutes and 20 seconds. I forget the number. Don't quote me on that. It's not like it cuts you off from that question, but you will have, for example, in section 1 of the new test, you're going to have 12 questions. And you're going to have on the quant section 21 minutes to answer those 12 questions. Just know that each of them, you do have to take them seriously. You skipping a question is not, I mean, there's all sorts of ways to take the test, and it doesn't officially penalize you to not answer the question, but to get the credit and get the score for the question, yeah, you got to answer it. I throw out there one thing I love about the GRE that is not true of some other tests out there, is that you can move around the section all you want. I think I might have even given this example before with you guys. I remember taking a test and being like on question 3, and it had something to do with the area of a triangle. That is not a complicated thing, but my brain just could not remember it. And I had a choice of either sitting there and freaking out about that or moving on to the next question. And I did. I moved on to the next question, kept going. And then, like, out of nowhere, something reminded me that the area of a triangle was essentially the same measurements, but half of that of a square. Don't quote me on that either. I'm not a geometry teacher, but that's what was in my brain. I was like, oh, I can go back and do question 3 now. That's what I love about the GRE, is it does give that flexibility that maybe you don't remember, or maybe you're a little uncertain about it. You can write down in scratch paper, hey, go back and check question 3. And so you don't have to get as stressed as a test that makes you answer that question right now. Once you answer, it's done and gone. But
thanks, Jay. We just had a question come in from is a colleague named Ross Weber. He does test prep for the Long Island tutoring company where he works, and he asks, and you kind of got into this already, but just maybe to rehash and clarify, would you recommend for clients to take the 4-hour test due to the change in weighted points?
Not necessarily. I mean, ultimately, it's been created in a way that you're working off percentages. If you get 75% of the questions right in many questions, you're going to get 75% right. If you get 75% right with less questions, it's still 75% right. It's just when you look at an individual question that specific one, it does weigh a little bit more. But the aggregate of the whole test, you're still the same percentage through it.
Got it.
I get what the question is there, and I get why you may think that, but at the end of the day, I think it washes out.
Okay, fair enough. And he asked a follow-up question: how do you expect the new version to affect overall scores?
Well, the work that we've been doing behind the scenes is that it shouldn't affect overall scores. We will naturally watch that over the next year or two, and see if there are some patterns of it raising or lowering in some way. And that may mean some adjustments on the type questions in the background. But that's what we do all the time. I mean, that's been going on for years. When there was the big change in 2012, we had to watch that. Did it suddenly get easier or harder? The expectation is it shouldn't change scores at all. That's how we've statistically built it in the background.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm gonna I'm happy you have only one writing section. It makes it easier. But why the choice to keep the analyze and argument
Sure.
and taking away the issue?
Well, you had to choose one, so one had to go. Honestly, at the end of the day, when you looked at them, they're similar enough. And what we're really looking for is that someone can write a really well organized, well spoken, well written, maybe I should say, organized, thoughtful essay. and maybe not as much as are you analyzing this or are you analyzing that, but the fact that you can analyze. At the end of the day, you know, that looking at the two essays seemed that they were mostly similar, talking to our client schools out there in which they were using which was more important to them. But then at the end of the day, what the schools saw was merely a score from 0 to 6. They did get a copy of your essay. I don't know how many of them actually read it. We never read it unless there was something we were really concerned about at my schools. We trusted ETS with the score that they gave. You know, so they had to go. I will say, you know, the other option test for business school, there is not a writing section. That's something I was shocked by. I always looked at the score for the writing section because the writing is the only thing in the entire test that is you. You produced it. You didn't just fill in a bubble. You didn't just write the answer 32. 42 is the answer that's the answer to life, isn't it?
I think so.
42. Point is that you this is the only actual production, unless you're taking the TOEFL, which we'll get to in a minute. The TOEFL has plenty of that for our international candidates, but for a domestic candidate, this was the only time that it was an authentic something produced by the actual candidate. I'm sure there's lots of wonderful, honest people out there that write their own essays. With ChatGPT, the temptation is there not to write your own essay or to model it after something that might have wrote. I'll tell you, even when I applied to grad school a few decades ago, I had friends look at my essay and edit it and mark it up, and I corrected it. So that wasn't completely my work. This writing section is your one opportunity to really shine and say, look what I can produce. And so I always appreciate that as a admissions director.
Well, you had actually said that when you were on here last time. You had actually talked about how the writing was super important. So you're on brand.
Yeah, and you know, it's true. Did I spend a long time with it? No, but I would look at the score and say, oh, they got a 5. They can write. Moving on, let's go with the rest of the things that are important in admissions. Look at it, see a 2. Uh-oh, we got a problem.
Right. Well, you've pared down the writing section. Are there any other topics that have been reduced? And what do you like about this in addition to it just being shorter?
What do I like about it in addition to it being shorter?
And what's been reduced?
What else? I mean, that's the big thing. It's I don't know that overall it brings down a whole lot of what you need to study. That's still very important. The material is still there. But I just think back to the day that I took my standardized test to get into my MBA program, and it literally being an entire day event. Getting up at 8 o'clock, driving across town to take the test for 4 hours, mind you, getting back home and everything else. It's just going to be a little bit easier in that, a little bit less stress. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a test. I don't get excited about taking tests any more than anyone else does.
Bara does.
Well, I mean, you know, it's funny because you've brought up stress and anxiety and worry, and you know, students have an opportunity for growth here too. You know, we work with students, helping them with that anxiety, and other tutors probably do too, and therapists do. And if you're getting really bent out of shape, it's an opportunity to look at what's actually happening here, because you're going to have other tests in your life. And if you don't deal with anxiety when it shows up the first time, by the time you're, you know, taking the GRE or you're taking the medical boards, like the higher medical boards, all of a sudden you're like, I knew I was always anxious, but it just builds on itself. So
I'll add one more thing. And I probably said this before too, because I say this frequently. The worst thing you can ever tell an admissions person is you don't have time to prepare for the test, or you don't want to take the test because you don't have time to prepare, things like that. You are literally telling the people who are now going to take a lot of your life and expect your preparation and all those sorts of things, this is your opportunity to say, look, I work hard, I prepare. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to score a 170 on both sections, but I worked really hard to get where I am. I've kept my brain back in gear. You may have been out of college for a few years and you get the opportunity you can really show up a lot of who you are and what your dedication is there. So,
No, that all makes sense. That sounded like a landline. Was that a landline?
It was.
Oh my gosh. That's a flashback.
Right?
And yeah, and maybe like this time, like we're gonna soon shine the spotlight on Jim for TOEFL. But I
Okay.
think like one last question on how do you recommend people to study for the new tests?
Jay,
Mr. Jay?
this is for you, Jay. We didn't switch over yet.
we
You're
did-
not off. You're not off.
I muted myself and took a drink. I was kicked back. How you study for the test? Same as you did before. Really, same material, same things on there. And again, that's what I heard recommended on some of the podcasts that I listened to. Oh, it's going to be easier. You don't have to study as much. That's not a true statement. Whether it be going through an organization that does test prep or you do it on your own. Back when I was preparing, I was able to do it on my own, and I did fine. But and I always throw out there, take a full test first. Join up. We have a program called the GRE Mentor. That's the one I really encourage to look at, because you will see where your strengths and weaknesses are, and you don't need to focus on what you already know. You need to focus on what you don't know. But there's so many tools out there. You can read reviews and things like that. We at ETS don't encourage one or the other, except I will encourage the GRE Mentor, which comes through ETS because it was written by the people who wrote the actual GRE. So the test questions are the same type things and everything, and it builds a study plan for you.
Yeah, I think it's super important to use official materials, that no matter what you're doing, even if it's the same material that's out there and the test prep publishers that are third party are producing material, getting the material that's written by the test writers and even retired questions are going to give you not just the texture and the topics, but you just you start to learn almost, it's like a cadence. It's a knowing of what the test is asking you. So even though, we're talking here about, areas of triangles, it's how is the GRE asking you about the area of a triangle? How are they approaching each of these pieces? And the more familiar you are with real retired questions and real questions that are in the official materials, the better off you are. And the more you go astray from that, what winds up happening is that you start to give more credibility to these third-party materials, and those might not actually have the same like, it's almost like a nuclear structure. Like it's really like this atomic structure.
And with the test that modifies as you go through it, the section 1 tells kind of the questions you're going to get on section 2. Well, who's deciding if this is an easy question or a hard question? At ETS, there was a very clear process of how that's determined, and you're going to get if it's a hard question, that's what we write as a hard question. Third parties may not know exactly what that is, so
or they make it part of it, but not all of it.
That's true.
I think like what, Bara, you're looking for is like store-bought pasta versus fresh pasta.
Yes. Boutique or big box.
Right.
All right,
All right,
moving
Jim, you're on the hot seat now. I'm putting the spotlight on you literally there. So tell us about the latest TOEFL, please. Is it shorter as well with the new writing task? Like, what should we be excited about here?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about. Obviously, the test is going from 3 hours to about 2 hours to complete. And that'll obviously make the test-taking experience more efficient and streamlined. Some of the changes to the actual test, similar to the GRE, is that they're removing the unscored items. And this again will allow the test taker to focus only on those questions that are going to impact their score. They're streamlining the test instructions. So again, by simplifying and clarifying the instructions, it'll help reduce the amount of time that the students spend on understanding the test requirements and allow the test takers to actually focus on the task at hand. They're also removing one of the reading passages and the associated questions. So that would be 10 questions. It'll go from 30 to 20 on the reading section. And then for the writing section, they're introducing a new writing task. And this is the only writing task that's going to change. And it's going to, the independent writing task is going to be replaced with a more concise and modern writing for an academic discussion task. And this will hopefully provide the test takers the ability to answer the question in a more concise and precise way. They found that the old writing passage that they replaced was somewhat antiquated, and so they wanted to update it with the new academic discussions task.
That's interesting. Could you expand on that a little bit? Like, in what way was it modernized? How did you go about doing that?
Sure. So the design of the new question, it basically expects the test taker to respond to or build on ideas expressed in another text. So they're going to have to demonstrate their ability to engage in academic discourse. They'll be asked to clearly state or elaborate on a position or an argument, and therefore showcasing their critical thinking and persuasive skills. And then they'll also make accurate and meaningful use of a range of grammatical structures and vocabulary in the academic context, therefore reflecting their language proficiency and adaptability.
Okay. And also, you're talking about the test being shorter, same with the GRE, same with other tests out there, this movement to shorten things. I mean, it's hour and a half, 2 hours, for about the time frame of a typical college class, right? So it's kind of like where our attention span can kind of max out. And so it makes sense that people are these organizations like ETS are shortening their tests to line up with the attention spans we have less and less of. But yeah, but so how should one prepare for the modern writing task specifically? Like writing for an academic discussion, like what materials do you recommend?
Yeah, sure. So if you go to our website, you'll see that we still have all the same practices that are available. Most of them have been updated on back in April to reflect the changes that are coming to the test. And I could send you guys a link if you want, where we have several different examples of the new writing task that they can practice with. And then also by the
end, if you don't mind, pop it into the chat.
Put it in the chat. Sure, I could do that here in a second. And then at the end of July, we're also launching a new AI scored practice test that will be mobile friendly, so students can do it on their phone as well. So that'll be coming at the end of July. And the new changes to our test come July 26th. If students, for example, signed up to take the test prior to July 26th, and they would prefer to take the newer test, they can reschedule at no charge. They just need to go into their account and change their date to after July 26th to do that.
Right. And that's the same thing as with the GRE. It's like from one day to the next, the new test is rolled in, the other one's rolled out, no overlap.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, it used to like I was going to ask, before we got on this call, like what are the things that people should consider whether taking the new one or old one? But the TOEFL's changing, it sounds really quickly. So they're not going to really have that option. And the GRE is changing, like you said, September 22nd. And then, that like there's not really a lot of thinking about which test you want to take because there is no overlap. Right. So either way, like it's really what your timing is and when you can study the most effectively for it. And
exactly.
And also, I mean, the assumption is that the tests are better tests than the previous ones. Right. So they're going to be more pleasant.
Yeah.
and enjoyable. And so it makes sense. I would think it would make more sense to take the newer ones
Me
if you
too.
have the option.
And TOEFL, we did a big press release back in early April, to announce the changes. So a lot of students have already gone in and changed their test date to after July 26th. So we really don't see a lot of students taking the test this week or next week. I think most of them are waiting until after the change date.
Got it. Well, I've got a question for both of you. I don't know if you can answer it precisely, but I'm curious. Is the reading comprehension on both of them, the reading sections, like have the words per essay changed at all, or are they approximately the same? Are they the same length?
Ours is, yes. Ours is the same.
Ours is as well. It would be, from my understanding, is basically one less reading passage. So if there were 4 before, now there's 3.
Got it. But the passages themselves are basically the same. And from what you were saying, Jay, you might have tested these out in the past. So these are vintage.
So I have like one last question. How are the changes between both tests complementing each other, and how will they help business schools in particular?
Complementing each other. Honestly, probably the most direct answer to that is accessibility for the applicants themselves. The fact that they're still daunting tests, but they're not going to be quite as daunting. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the schools that we work with and require our tests are getting the candidates that they want. And I think quite frankly, a number of candidates have been scared off from such a daunting 4-hour test. I think the TOEFL was also close to 4 hours, 3 hours.
3.
Yeah.
3.
And now they're both going to be shorter, so it's a little bit less there. And in the end, hopefully that keeps people from getting scared off from applying to some good quality schools that are out there, and getting a great education out of it.
Yeah, and I think it also lends to what Eric was saying about the attention span of students now too. It's much shorter, and so with that, in the research that we've done, we had to basically, serve that market that's out there.
Yep.
Makes complete sense. And I think we are maxed out on the attention span of our viewers now, as we are, that's all the time that we have for this episode today. I want to thank our guests, Jay and Jim from ETS, for giving us such clarity about the new test. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going to be excited, those who are wanting to take this. And MBA Hopeful, if you have liked today's episode, please give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to MBA Waves to stay on top of all the latest trends and news in the world of MBAs and business and education. And don't forget to check us out next time, same time and place. And also please check out our mbawaves.com. Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.